Muhammad Ali, born Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr., January 17, 1942 – June 3, 2016, was an American professional boxer and activist. Nicknamed the Greatest, he is regarded as one of the most significant sports figures of the 20th century and is often cited as the greatest heavyweight boxer of all time. In 1999, he was named Sportsman of the Century by Sports Illustrated and the Sports Personality of the Century by the BBC. Born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, he began training as an amateur boxer at age 12. At 18, he won a gold medal in the light heavyweight division at the 1960 Summer Olympics and turned professional later that year. He became a Muslim after 1961. He won the World Heavyweight Championship, defeating Sonny Liston in a major upset on February 25, 1964. At age 22, during that year, he denounced his birth name as a slave name and formally changed his name to Muhammad Ali. In 1966, Ali refused to be drafted into the military owing to his religious beliefs and ethical opposition to the Vietnam War and was found guilty of draft evasion and stripped of his boxing titles. He stayed out of prison while appealing the decision to the Supreme Court, where his conviction was overturned in 1971. He did not fight for nearly 4 years and lost a period of peak performance as an athlete. Ali's actions as a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War made him an icon for the larger counterculture of the 1960s generation, and he was a very high-profile figure of racial pride for African Americans during the Civil Rights Movement and throughout his career. As a Muslim, Ali was initially affiliated with Elijah Muhammad's Nation of Islam, NOI. He later disavowed the NOI, adhering to Sunni Islam. Back since the earliest days of boxing, experts relied on what they called the tails of the tape to predict how successful a given athlete's boxing career may or may not be. The tails of the tape were a series of physical measurements that included the fighter's fist, reach, chest expansion, and weight of broken bar. This process, they believed, would help them figure out who would dominate in the boxing ring. And guess what? Muhammad Ali failed all of his measurements across the board. They put him in the failure bucket because, as Carol Dweck explains in her phenomenal book, Mindset, Get summary here. Muhammad Ali was not a natural, not by a long shot, at least according to the tales of the tape yardstick. The great secret behind Ali's success wasn't brawn. It was brains. He possessed what Dr. Carol Dweck refers to as a growth mindset. Let's explain exactly what it means to have a growth mindset, and how you can develop one of your own to achieve greater success within your own life. Dr. Dweck writes that Muhammad Ali's iconic boxing career had much more to do with his growth-oriented psychology as opposed to the widely accepted yet erroneous predictor of success, physical talent. Muhammad Ali was not a natural. He had great speed, but he didn't have the physique of a great fighter. He didn't have the strength, and he didn't have the classical moves. In fact, he boxed all wrong. He didn't block punches with his arms and elbows. He punched in rallies like an amateur. He kept his jaw exposed. He pulled back his torso to evade the impact of oncoming punches, which Jose Torres, former colleague of Ali, said was like someone in the middle of a train track trying to avoid being hit by an oncoming train, not by moving to one or the other side of the track, but by running backwards. Sonny Liston, Ali's adversary, was a natural. He had it all: the size, the strength, and the experience. His power was legendary. It was unimaginable that Ali could beat Sonny Liston. The matchup was so ludicrous that the arena was only half full for the fight. A broken bar. Ali's brilliance was his mind, his brains, not his brawn. He sized up his opponent and went for his mental jugular. Not only did he study Liston's fighting style, but he closely observed what kind of person Liston was out of the ring. When he was asked about his preparation for the fight, Ali said, "I read everything I could where he had been interviewed. I talked with people who had been around him or had talked with him. I would lay in bed and put all of the things together and think about them, and try to get a picture of how his mind worked. Then he'd use everything he'd learned about his opponent to wage psychological warfare against him." Side note, Arnold Schwarzenegger used to do the same thing. Back to Dr. Dweck's insights from Mindset. Why did Ali appear to go crazy before each fight? Because, a broken bar. He knew that an knockout punch is the one they don't see coming. Ali said, Liston had to believe that I was crazy, that I was capable of doing anything. He couldn't see nothing to me at Talbot Mouth, and that's all I wanted him to see. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Your hands can't hit what your eyes can't see. Ali's win over Liston made boxing history. The interesting thing about Ali was how much of a paradox he was. Physically speaking, his performance in the ring was totally off. But psychologically speaking, he was sharper than a cut coal. Ali helps us understand that the growth mindset is about rising strong regardless of how lackluster his physical endowments may have been. Instead of looking in the mirror and saying, "I'm not good enough to be a champion," instead he said, "I'm going to use a different path to achieve greatness." And he did a broken bar. He showed everyone that success comes first and foremost from the gem between your ears. Victories come from the head, not from the fist. So what was it about Ali that contributed to his insanely successful boxing career? What made him one of the greatest boxers of all time? How'd he end up beating Sonny Liston, especially when, all things considered, Liston outclassed Ali across every conceivable physical metric? And to put a cherry on top, Liston was also a naturally talented fighter, but he was still defeated by Ali despite these advantages. Now, the definitive biography of an American icon. From a New York Times best-selling author with unique access to Ali's inner circle, he was the wittiest, the prettiest, the strongest, the bravest, and, of course, the greatest. As he told us himself, Muhammad Ali was one of the 20th century's most fantastic figures and arguably the most famous man on the planet. "I am America," he once declared. "I am the part you won't recognize, but get used to me. Black, confident, cocky, my name, not yours, my religion, not yours, my goals, my own. Get used to me." He was born Cassius Clay in racially segregated Louisville, Kentucky, the son of a sign painter and a housekeeper. He went on to become a heavyweight boxer with the dazzling mix of power and speed, a warrior for racial pride, a comedian, a preacher, a poet, a draft resistor, an actor, and a lover. Millions hated him when he changed his religion, changed his name, and refused to fight in the Vietnam War. He fought his way back, winning hearts, but at great cost. Like so many boxers, he stayed too long. Jonathan Higgs Ali reveals Ali in the complexity he deserves, shedding important new light on his politics, religion, personal life, and neurological condition. Ali is a story about America, about race, about a brutal sport, and about a courageous man who shook up the world.